If you're a fan of pot legalization, then Barack Obama's got some good news for you, or at least he's made some statements that should give you some, I think, a good impression of where we might go over the course of the next year or two. Now, he was recently interviewed by The New Yorker, and he talked about how dangerous he thought pot was. And this is actually good stuff. He says, "As has been well documented, I smoked pot as a kid, and I view it as a bad habit and a vice, not very different from the cigarettes that I smoked as a young person up through a big chunk of my adult life. I don't think it is more dangerous than alcohol." So that's obvious, and a good sign that he's recognizing the obvious.
So, yeah, we're making progress, as Bush used to say. So I'm happy about that. It's a big deal that in my lifetime, we have a president of the United States of America saying that pot is less dangerous than alcohol.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in the Reagan years. At that time, we could not envision that, okay? So it's a great development.
Yeah.
And they have actually taken some affirmative steps legally to make sure that they're not cracking down on pot, especially where it's been legalized for recreational uses, Colorado, Washington, et cetera.
Yeah.
Do we still have a long way to go? Yes. Could President Obama do more legally? Yes. And did he, in this first term, break the record for most amount of dispensary raids? Yes, okay?
Which is ridiculous.
But yeah, of course it's ridiculous. But at least once he has begun his verbal transition, at some point, legal transitions follow.
Yeah.
So, look, his position on gay marriage, that he didn't actually believe in gay marriage earlier on in his first term, was ridiculous, right? But once his evolution begins, and it's usually around when the issue gets above the 51% mark, as it did on gay marriage and as it has now on pot, hey.
And it seems like it moved people to some extent. And hopefully this will as well.
Yeah, and Obama's not a leader, he's a politician, and hence he's a follower. But once he gets ahead of the train, like now the train is headed in that direction, and he jumps on board, it does give the train momentum.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important.
Yeah. Now, so you've often pointed out the hypocrisy of Barack Obama smoking pot, talking about it when he was younger, and now working to enforce a system that makes that illegal for other people. Here's a good sign. He says, "We should not be locking up kids or individual users for long stretches of jail time when some of the folks who are writing those laws have probably done the same thing." So he seems to at least be self-aware of the hypocrisy from some of his previous actions.
So I'm slightly torn on that because I love that quote. I love it. I think that's exactly right. That's what I've been hoping a politician would say for a long time. You know, and it applies to Clinton, and it applies to George W. Bush, and it applies to Obama, let alone all the other legislators who've all smoked. Of course, not all legislators have smoked, but a lot of them have smoked the pot. And the pot.
And then potted up on weed.
Right. And then said, yeah, I don't give a shit. Send all those kids to jail, ruin their lives for the same exact thing I did.
Yeah.
Okay, at least Obama's pointing out his own hypocrisy and others. Yeah. The only reason why I'm slightly conflicted on that is that President Obama always seems to react to his own presidency as if he's not the president. Right? Like, but you're the guy who broke the record on dispensary raids and all those people you sent to prison. So, like, is it news to you? Like, he always, like, whenever anything bad happens, like, he comes out like, oh, we were tapping Angela Merkel's phone? Ha! Golly gee, I'm shocked to find out that was happening. Yeah, we're putting kids in jail for the same thing I did? Huh, look at this, 5 years into my presidency, I figured that thing out.
Well, no, he's like Kelly from The Office. When he talks, he zones himself out. He's like, I'm not going to pay attention to that stuff. And then he watches the tape later and he's like, holy shit, I'm anti-pot.
But again, we're making progress, and this is really important steps.
And he also, so we talked about the hypocrisy, he seems to understand how the war on drugs is inherently discriminatory and is not applied in the same way to different groups. He says it's important for it to go forward, the legalization, or at least the experiment in Colorado specifically, because it's important for society not to have a situation in which a large portion of people have at one time or another broken the law and only a select few get punished. There he's talking about how, you know, if you're white, you're a lot less likely to go to jail for some of these same crimes, for smoking the same substances, for injecting the same substances.
And put aside the racial angle for a second, even if you take it out of that realm, he's so right about that. Like, just as Martin Luther King said, if you're a poor white kid in an Appalachian, you're going to suffer the same income inequality, but in this case, you're all going to suffer the same justice inequality. You're going to get locked up for pot. You're going to get locked up for taking any kind of drugs. But the guys who are politicians or that are in Beverly Hills or wherever they are, they're not going to get locked up for pot. You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it.
Yeah. Forget
the kids. I was just going to say, kids going to Princeton.
Yeah.
They're not going to get locked up for pot. I mean, it might be a really rare exception. Whereas if you're in the Bronx or you're in Logan, West Virginia, they're going to do it like that to you. You think they're going to blink an eye before they send you to jail for 20 years?
No, you don't get locked up if you drive drunk and you kill people now. We've got affluenza in this country. We don't have justice equality.